All right. Good evening, everyone. I don't have a big announcement and 5 minutes of clapping or any of that like the president does. But hopefully, I'm sure you're all clapping along right now. So we are going to watch the State of the Union. It's the president's second. The first one didn't really count, so I mean this would be the third address to Congress he's given. From what I understand, his primary message is going to be about unity, which is somewhat laughable considering we just ended the longest shutdown in U.S. history. I don't quite remember exactly how many days it was. 35? Pretty long, though, and I do owe somewhat of an apology to the during the border wall emergency live stream. I said that all those government workers they've always gotten their back pay, and they will get their back pay. But when I said that, I didn't think that it was going to go on for 35 days. At that point, it had only been 10 days or something. So I apologize to all of the government workers who ended up having to go get food stamps and tell their landlord that they don't have their money, but they will get it, and they have for the most part. Contractors, on the other hand, they're in a different boat. If they were not actively working, they just lose that money. That's what happens when you're furloughed that. Anyone who was working, TSA, air traffic controllers, what few park rangers were working, stuff like that, they'll all get paid. So I shouldn't have been as about them at that time. But how could I know it was going to go on that long? It's very likely the reason we're having this State of the Union today rather than a week ago was because it was canceled thanks to the shutdown. They came to an agreement where they opened the government for 3 weeks, which I think is the shortest budget resolution that we've ever had. Just 3 weeks. But I very much think the government will shut down again on February 15th. I hope it doesn't, but I'm preparing for that to happen, which I will be in London at that point. So hopefully I'll be able to get back. I mean, I am a white American citizen. I have every confidence that when my plane lands, I can just come on in. And at that point, the country will have only been shut down for 3 days or something like that. So hopefully everyone's still working. So the primary message here is going to be unity. I'm not sure how he intends to demonstrate that. The country is so divided, not only among the politicians, but the people. The people are, I think last I saw, I mean, we're as divided as we were before the Civil War, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I do think he's going to bring up the national emergency. Uh, we have the National Emergencies Act of 1976, and under that, the president can declare a national emergency, in which case everything that goes towards that specific project comes out of the defense budget rather than the general budget. So let's see if I can show you. We are currently, the United States right now is under 31 different national emergencies. Now, one of them you can probably guess. It's quite obvious. It's 9/11. After like a week after 9/11, we entered a state of national emergency, and we've been ever since. But we are under 31 of them. And I have the list here. So the oldest one was in 1979 for the Iran hostage crisis, which ended in 1981. We are still in that. And that was signed by Carter. Then there's a whole bunch of other ones related to Bosnia, Yugoslavia. Here's the 9/11 one, and then there's another one that I wanted to point out because it's funny. Where am I looking? Okay. Ah, here it is. Yes. We are also under a national emergency because of Gaddafi, who died like 3 months after that. 3 or 4 months after that. So he's been dead for coming up on 8 years, and we're still under a national emergency for that. I pointed this out on Twitter, and quite a few people wanted to know why. And I don't entirely know the answer to that question. When Donald Trump renewed the Iran hostage crisis emergency, he said that relations with Iran have not normalized yet, so he's going to continue doing it. And that would make sense if it was like a sanction on Iran, but it's not. It's a national emergency related to the Iran hostage crisis, which ended 38 years ago. So, yeah, I don't understand. I don't entirely know what the effects of that are. But were he to declare a national emergency for the border wall or the humanitarian crisis on our southern border, he could use the defense budget to build a wall. I very much don't think that that would happen. First, it would take years and years to build that. It's not like we could just get it up in a week or even a year. It would take forever. And the eminent domain problems, it would take forever. It just wouldn't happen. And by then, Congress, in the National Emergencies Act of 1976, it says that Congress can undo the state of emergency. However, it was pointed out to me that there have been some Supreme Court cases related to that may put that in question, and perhaps they can't. But I don't think it's been successfully really pushed all that hard. And when it comes to the border, I think it would be pushed quite hard. So I'm looking at the... I see what's happening. 1 second. I am looking at that's not the window I want open. Come on. We're going to watch the White House's channel doing this. So there. That's what I wanted. Thank you very much. So they might not have like all of the opening clapping and all of that stuff where the guy yells Mr. Speaker or Madam Speaker, the president, and then they clap and all that stuff, because it looks like it's going to start about 10 minutes after everything else is supposed to start. But that said, I understand quite a few people in the Discord, and probably you guys at home, are planning on doing a drinking game or something to that effect. I expect, just looking at the list of people that Trump invited, and I'll bring that up here in a second. he released the list of his token people, the people that he's going to point at and say, this person lost both legs to ISIS, and then while they were saving some kittens from a tree, MS-13 came and stole their prosthetic legs. Like, the people that they point to and everyone has to clap. I don't think that specific situation has happened, by the way, but I do expect him to say ISIS and to say MS-13 several times. ISIS is incredibly weakened. They're not destroyed as many as the president himself likes to say. But MS-13 he's going to bring up, especially because of that subway shooting in New York. MS-13 is incredibly small. I want to say that there's only like 10,000 of them. And they started here in America, in Los Angeles. They're not some like foreign gang that's coming here. They're pretty much American. And I expect him to talk about them just because of the list of people he's invited. I'm trying to find that again. Oh, I know how to find it. Someone sent me that. Although, yeah, spoilers for those of you who don't, you want to be surprised by who he's inviting. Here we go. Although it's a little off center and stuff, but this is a good way to make sure I never come to your website again. By the way, I'm expecting the big pop-up. Please turn off your ad block and such. But okay. So he's going to talk about prison reform as well, and I don't want to necessarily be a broken record when the event actually starts. But they did pass prison reform, and it is one of their like highlight bipartisan deals. So this is one of the people that was recently released because of the First Step Act, and when he brings it up, I will stop him to bring up some stuff about that. I'm not entirely sure why this person, who is undergoing chemotherapy, is there. This is a former heroin addict, so he's going to bring up the opioid crisis, and I imagine he's gonna say fentanyl coming from China. He's going to say heroin coming from Mexico and all of that, when most opioid overdoses occur from prescription medicine. So I doubt he'll bring that up. A border agent. Yes, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That's a touchy one, because whenever they lower taxes, there's always an initial boom in employment and GDP and your personal paycheck. And then it takes a few years before the deficit grows wildly out of control and the debt ceiling gets reached again and all of that, because you can't reduce taxes without reducing spending, and that's exactly what he did. We'll talk about that when he brings it up, because I'm sure he will, especially with the latest job numbers being relatively positive. Victims of the synagogue shooting. Okay, and then some more. Here it is. That's what I was waiting for. Go away. And then, so a terror victim, and then another prison reform. I don't want to say someone who was helped by that, but yeah, that's what we're looking at for people he's going to point out in the crowd. Every president does that. Every single president I've ever watched to do a State of the Union has their token people in the crowd that they can point to and say, this person was directly helped by my policy. Every single one of them. Obama, Trump, Bush, Clinton. As far as I can remember, anyway, they've always done that. So I'm not going to fault him for doing that, or who he picks to do that. No one's ever going to pick someone that, was harmed directly by his policies. So that's fine, and it makes sense. But I do imagine that border security is going to be a big one for him, because that's what the shutdown was about and will be about. Because I'm quite sure that it's going to shut down again. 70% of Americans are against the wall. And I know from experience doing this about the border wall address a few weeks ago that there's going to be quite a few people in the chat who say walls work. I can see a wall behind you. Obviously walls work. So, gotcha. And yeah, this wall works. It's maybe 40 feet long, 10 feet high, and I can see around all sides of it, and it's enclosing a space. Walls enclosing a space are very helpful, and especially in small areas. A 2,000-mile long wall, unless you have someone standing every few miles who's able to react, it just isn't gonna... It's not effective, and I think we all know that. Having a wall through a city, like a border town, makes sense. Like, this half of the city is United States, that half is Mexico. Okay. But out in the middle of the desert where no one is, when very likely no one ever will be, it doesn't make sense, and it would just be a huge expense for no reason. And after he started building the steel slats, I believe it was, it was the border, or the Department of Homeland Security, who cut through it in under 5 minutes. Let's see if I can bring up that. But they cut through their own wall. Yeah, there it is. That's... Okay, well, I didn't expect it to be that tiny, but they cut through it in minutes. It slowed them down by less than 5 minutes, and that's what a wall is going to do. It'll slow people down for a few minutes at best, and it would be just a huge expense for no reason whatsoever. Trump was actually, a year ago, a lot of people don't quite remember this because Americans seem to have a short memory for whatever reason. A year ago, the government shut down for a weekend because over DACA. Trump didn't want to give them a path to citizenship. So he shut the government down for a weekend. He was offered border wall money during that shutdown, and he didn't take it. I wonder if I can find that as well. I do appreciate the super chats, by the way. I've seen a few of them so far. I may not be able to read them during this, but all the super chats are saved for later, and before the live stream starts, or before the State of the Union starts, I will kind of lay out the rules. So this is the timeline for, well, I guess it wasn't last year. It was last year, January, 18. Let's see if I can find, Schumer offered Trump upwards of $20 billion that he wanted for his border wall in exchange for a pathway to citizenship for eligible immigrant population. That's DACA. The deal was rejected and the government shut down. $20 billion he was offered and he didn't take it. But he's gonna now that he isn't offering a path to citizenship for DACA recipients, he just wants border wall money, and they're not going to give it to him. And at this point, they're just not going to do it. So it should be starting here soon. It just went to the, well, I guess you can't quite see that, but it says it's live and all of that. So once it starts, we'll switch over to that, and we will pause on occasion when I see something outlandish. You'll probably see it on my face. But down here in the bottom over there, I have some kind of ground rules of this. This isn't a Q&A. It's not a hangout. We're watching the State of the Union and reacting and commenting on it. So I am watching the chat, and I do have moderators who I appreciate very much watching the chat. And off topic stuff is just kind of going to be ignored, including super chats. So if you donate a few bucks to ask me a question, if it's not related to the State of the Union, I'll see it, and I'll thank you for the super chat. But I'm not gonna veer off topic. All the super chats are kind of put into a separate list that I can scroll through after the live stream. So I will definitely read whatever it is that you had to say if you happen to do a super chat. And thank you very much in advance if you do. But we are going to try to remain on topic. I do have a Discord. People asking in the chat. I have a Discord for patrons. It's a $2 patron thing. So $2 and you get into the Discord. It's a pretty active place. They help me make my future videos and stuff. And they have their own separate private chat room for this live stream now. So, let's see here. They should start here in 2 or 3 minutes, perhaps. Am I going to watch the Democratic response? I get asked this every year. Typically, I don't, because I'm the response, more or less. We'll see how long this takes. If we happen to breeze through it quickly, then I might watch the Democratic response. During the border wall address a few weeks ago, we watched Trump's Oval Office speech, and I was responding to it as he went along. And then we watched the Democratic response, and they just said the same stuff I was saying. So it may not be entirely useful. Though, I mean, I did pick at them when they deserved to be picked at. They happen to use veterans being out of a job, and I'm not a big fan of veteran tokenism. I am a veteran, before you say anything like that. I am a veteran, and I'm not a fan of when people bring up veterans as a way to like pull at the heartstrings and whatnot. So yeah, if you want to help veterans, give them a job, but don't just use that as a way to pull at emotions, I suppose. I don't know why I'm coughing so much. So, unity is the big thing. Just to recap, unity, and he's going to bring up MS-13 and the opioid crisis. Border security is going to be big. He wants to build a big, beautiful wall. He's probably going to talk about his job numbers, which strangely went up in January, which a lot of people didn't expect, especially with the shutdown going on. I would be really surprised if he brings up beautiful, clean coal, which doesn't exist, by the way, but more coal plants have shut down in the first 2 years of Trump's presidency than all 8 years of Obama's presidency. So if anything, he's like the worst president for coal. I don't know how he's going to revitalize that industry when everybody, I think most people are starting to get on board with the idea that global warming is real. There's no more denying it anymore. And coal is just a bad idea. So, yeah, I'd be really surprised if he was like, if he puts on the hat and he does the digging. There's like no way he's going to do that. Someone commented in the chat here saying that I'm not the only veteran who agrees that the token use of veterans is kind of a problem. I wouldn't say that out loud if I didn't talk to other veterans on the regular who say the same. We don't like being used. So. Well, I tell you what, we're gonna switch over to my like be back in a moment screen, and I will be back before they start. Hey, look, I'm back. So they're doing all their fun clapping. Let me make sure that you guys can hear me, and tell me you can hear the clapping. Okay, good. Everyone can hear everything. That's good. If anyone is curious as to, we're watching the White House channel, and the reason I live stream things like this is because this is public domain and I can't get a copyright strike for it. So I do these sorts of things. I don't necessarily do interviews and stuff like that because those can be copyright striked, and I really don't want to have that. Oh, loading. There we go. For the curious, a lot of people on YouTube are having trouble with copyright claims and copyright strikes. I have no strikes currently. I do have 2 claims, and they are, for the most part, legitimate, so I'm not immune either. I know Reddit likes to get all riled up about the copyright system on YouTube, but you know, it is what it is. It's better than getting sued, I guess, or being taken down completely. Wow. Yeah. See, this is what he wanted. This is why he opened the government back up, because he wanted this so bad, to just be standing in front of people and have them all clap. This would be so painful to actually have to be there. Someone just asked why a lot of them are dressed in white. Sometimes Congress people will get together and dress up in the same color to stand for some cause. Um, I don't know if someone is able to quickly look that up and see why they're doing that. Here we go.
Madam Speaker, Mr. Vice President, members of Congress, the First Lady of the United States,
Oh, this is going to be painful, isn't it? Why are we stopping to clap for the First Lady?
and my fellow Americans. We meet tonight at a moment of unlimited potential. As we begin a new Congress, I stand here ready to work with you to achieve historic breakthroughs for all Americans. Millions of our fellow citizens are watching us now gathered in this great chamber, hoping that we will govern not as two parties, but as one nation.
For the curious, they are wearing white to stand in solidarity with the women of the suffrage movement who refuse to take no for an answer.
The agenda I will lay out this evening is not a Republican agenda or a Democrat agenda. It's the agenda of the American people. Many of us have campaigned on the same core promises: to defend American jobs and demand fair trade for American workers, to rebuild and revitalize our nation's infrastructure, to reduce the price of health care and prescription drugs, to create an immigration system that is safe, lawful, modern, and secure, and to pursue a foreign policy that puts America's interest first. There is a new opportunity in American politics if only we have the courage together to seize it.
It's always funny to me that only half of them clap.
Victory is not winning for our party. Victory is winning for our country. This year, America will recognize two important anniversaries that show us the majesty of America's mission and the power of American pride. In June, we mark 75 years since the start of what General Dwight D. Eisenhower called the Great Crusade, the Allied liberation of Europe in World War II. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, 15,000 young American men jumped from the sky, and 60,000 more stormed in from the sea to save our civilization from tyranny. Here with us tonight,
He was expecting a
are
clap.
three of those incredible heroes. Private First Class Joseph Riley, Staff Sergeant Irving Locker, and Sergeant Herman Zaitchek. Please.
Okay, so this is some veteran tokenism. I didn't quite expect a D-Day version of that, but there you go. And they're going to clap for a long time. For those of you unfamiliar with a State of the Union, this is pretty standard. It's going to be like a third of it is just clapping. And you can tell he's expecting it because he steps back from the podium and like looks around. It's so obvious when he is expecting an applause break. And this is quite... yeah. D-Day, wow.
Gentlemen, we salute you. In 2019, we also celebrate 50 years since brave young pilots flew 250,000 miles through space to plant the American flag on the face of the moon. Half a century later, we are joined by one of the Apollo 11 astronauts who planted that flag, Buzz Aldrin.
That's not me in control of the volume there. It just keeps going up and down all crazy. Huh. Having Buzz Aldrin there is a little bit weird too. I mean, we're talking about some real old American accomplishments here. When's he gonna get to like his stuff, like the stuff he supposedly did?
Thank you, Buzz. This year, American astronauts will go back to space on American rockets. In the 20th century, America saved freedom, transformed science, redefined the middle class, and when you get down to it, there's nothing anywhere in the world that can compete with America.
This is really strange and bizarre. I don't think I've seen a State of the Union where he refers to stuff that happened 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Now we must step boldly and bravely into the next chapter of this great American adventure. And we must create a new standard of living for the 21st century. An amazing quality of life for all of our citizens is within reach. We can make our communities safer, our families stronger, our culture richer, our faith deeper, and our middle class bigger and more prosperous than ever before. But we must reject the politics of revenge, resistance, and retribution, and embrace the boundless potential of cooperation, compromise, and the common good.
Okay, so here I am going to pause it real quick just to address. I find it quite odd that he. I mean, sure it is the anniversary of sort of what is it, 75 years since D-Day? Not the end of the war, but D-Day. I mean, sure, that'd be a great thing to put on the History Channel or something, but not at the beginning, at the front of your State of the Union to talk about how great we're doing right now, as well as the moon landing. That was 50 years ago. He talked about making the middle class bigger and stronger than it ever has been before, when I think we are all quite well aware of the fact that the middle class is smaller today than it was 50 or even 75 years ago. So I'll be interested to see where he goes from here.
Together, we can break decades of political stalemate. We can bridge old divisions, heal old wounds, build new coalitions, forge new solutions, and unlock the extraordinary promise of America's future. The decision is ours to make. We must choose between greatness or gridlock, results or resistance, vision or vengeance, incredible progress or pointless destruction. Tonight, I ask you to choose greatness.
What papers are Nancy Pelosi like shuffling with while he's talking? That's also quite strange.
Over the last 2 years, my administration has moved with urgency and historic speed to confront problems neglected by leaders of both parties over many decades. In just over 2 years since the election, we have launched an unprecedented economic boom, a boom that has rarely been seen before. There's been nothing like it. We have created 5.3 million new jobs, and importantly added 600,000 new manufacturing jobs, something which almost everyone said was impossible to do. But the fact is, we are just getting started.
This is going to be a long night, isn't it? I'm quite sure that 5 million figure he just said is how many jobs were created, but I know for a fact that most of them were part-time, and that doesn't take into account how many disappeared. I don't know where he got that manufacturing number from. I hadn't seen that number. I find that strange considering how many plants are closing, but you know.
Wages are rising at the fastest pace in decades and growing for blue-collar workers who I promised to fight for. They're growing faster than anyone else thought possible. Nearly 5 million Americans have been lifted off food stamps. The U.S. economy is growing almost twice as fast.
Okay, I'm sorry, but that one was just too much for me. He said that wages are growing faster than they ever have when is that little bump faster than they ever have? I'm not quite sure. Like, we all know that they haven't. I am aware that recent numbers said that wages have gone up 3% or 3.2% in the last year, which, if you were making $1 an hour at the beginning of the year, now you're making $1.03. Is that really something? I mean, it's not nothing, I guess, but I don't know if I'd brag about that. I mean, it's better than previous years, I suppose. So, points for that.
Fast today as when I took office, and we are considered far and away the hottest economy anywhere in the world, not even close. Unemployment has reached the lowest rate in over half a century.
I somehow knew that was coming. I didn't bring it up before we started. Unemployment numbers are down, that is true. But most people are still underemployed, meaning that they aren't making enough to live comfortably or at all. If you have two part-time jobs, you don't have health insurance and all of the other benefits, retirement benefits and stuff like that. So yeah, people have jobs, but they're not making quite enough. He also he mentioned food stamps a little bit ago, which I was unaware that a ton of people had gotten off of food stamps, especially when so many government workers just got on.
African American, Hispanic American, and Asian American unemployment have all reached their lowest levels ever recorded. Unemployment for Americans with disabilities has also reached an all-time low.
I hope you are all aware how little effect the president has on the economy in general, but unemployment specifically. He can't order companies to create jobs. That disability point, or Americans with disabilities point, is a weird flex, but okay.
People are working now than at any time in the history of our country. 157 million people at work.
That's half the country.
We passed a massive tax cut
Here we go.
for working families and doubled the child tax credit.
He did do that. And we're going to see the effects of that in a few years because the deficit is so much bigger now.
We virtually ended the estate tax, or death tax, as it is often called, on small businesses, for ranchers, and also for family farms.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know what the estate tax is, that's a tax on your estate over $5 million. So everybody in this chat, every single one of you, will never have an estate tax. I won't. I'm willing to bet everyone in the chat will not either. He got rid of a tax on the rich, but he phrased it really strangely by saying we got rid of it on small businesses, which businesses don't pay estate tax, so that's very strange. It's just on rich people who have an estate of 5 million or more, and that's literally the government taking your money over your dead body. Like, it doesn't get any more literal than that. That was created to stop a landed gentry in America, and now we're getting rid. I mean, I wasn't aware that they got rid of it. I'm assuming they just lowered it, but the estate tax or death tax is no, none of you have an estate that's going to be taxed when you die.
We eliminated the very unpopular Obamacare individual mandate penalty.
Okay, I don't have time to get into that. I am going to make a video on healthcare eventually, a moderate's guide to healthcare. So,
And to give critically ill patients access to life-saving cures, we passed, very importantly, right to try.
I do agree with that move as well, by the way. That was a good call.
My administration has cut more regulations in a short period of time than any other administration during its entire tenure. Companies are coming back to our country in large numbers, thanks to our historic reductions in taxes and regulations. And we have unleashed.
So after I know I keep pausing it, and I apologize. I'd like to let it go a little bit longer, but he passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and immediately all of the big corporations gave bonuses, like AT&T and Disney, I think. A whole bunch of them gave big bonuses, and they credited Donald Trump's tax cuts. And then like a few weeks or months later, they just started cutting people, cutting jobs and shipping them out or just eliminating them completely. So him saying that corporations are bringing jobs back like they never have before is odd.
A revolution in American energy. The United States is now the #1 producer of oil and natural gas anywhere in the world.
We always have been. I don't think that was ever, maybe Russia, maybe, but we've always been like #1 or 2.
And now, for the first time in 65 years, we are a net exporter of energy. After 24 months of rapid progress, our economy is the envy of the world. Our military is the most powerful on earth by far. And America...
See, he brings up the military and everyone's got to stand up and clap and stop what they're doing. Hey, look at that. AOC is not standing up. I saw someone in the chat say that and I was like, come on, of course she is. Nope.
America is again winning each and every day. Members of Congress, the state of our union is strong.
None of them are clapping. Wow. I got to admit, before I started, while I was thinking about what I was going to say before the live stream started, I was like, there is no way he's going to say the state of our union is strong. How can you say that after the longest government shutdown in U.S. history? That blows my mind. The last president to say it wasn't strong was Gerald Ford, so like 40 years ago. I can't I thought he would say something like it's strong but it could be stronger or something like that. I didn't think he was just going to flat say strong. Wow. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised. This shouldn't surprise me anymore.
That sounds so good.
Oh,
Our country is vibrant, and our economy is thriving like never before. On Friday, it was announced that we added another 304,000 jobs last month alone, almost double the number expected. An economic miracle is taking place in the United States, and the only thing that can stop it are foolish wars, politics, or ridiculous partisan investigations.
oh my God. Oh, even Nancy rolled her eyes at that. Are you kidding me? Did he really just say that? Oh my, I'm, wow. This is way worse than the previous States of the Union. Wow. I can't believe how terrible this is. Okay, so they investigated Hillary Clinton when she was not president like 9 times and they found nothing. They're investigating him for this. They're still on the first investigation, and he calls it a. He uses the State of the Union to say that this partisan investigation is the only thing that could stop America's growth. Wow. Wow. Yeah, okay, anyway, I'm just gonna keep going. So we'll get through this together, guys.
If there is going to be peace and legislation, there cannot be war and investigation. It just doesn't work that way.
Did he really make a rhyme?
We must be united at home to defeat our adversaries abroad. This new era of cooperation can start with finally confirming the more than 300 highly qualified nominees who are still stuck in the Senate, in some cases years and years waiting. Not right.
So I had to pause it there. I had to because he hasn't even made nominations for hundreds of positions. So when he says there are 300 waiting, I don't know who he's talking about, but he also has just left hundreds without nominations for them to even reject. Still, 2 years in, 38 ambassadors don't even have a nominee to fill the spot. How can he? Because he's lying. That's how.
The Senate has failed to act on these nominations, which is unfair to the nominees and very unfair to our country. Now is the time for bipartisan action. Believe it or not, we have already proven that that's possible. In the last Congress, both parties came together to pass unprecedented legislation to confront the opioid crisis, a sweeping new farm bill, historic VA reforms, and after 4 decades of rejection, we passed VA accountability so that we can finally terminate those who mistreat our wonderful veterans. And just weeks ago, both parties united for groundbreaking criminal justice reform. They said it couldn't be done.
Okay, so he brought it up, so now I get to finally talk about it a little bit here. So yes, they did pass criminal justice reform. It's called the First Step Act, and it gets rid of federal mandatory sentences, and it gives judges more leniency when it comes to sentencing and stuff like that. But U.S. Congress and the president can only affect federal prisons. Currently, in the United States, we have 2.4 million people in prison of some form or another, whether it's city, state, or federal. However, federal prisons are this little gold piece right here. It's about 9% of the total. So while I agree that it is a good first step and it is titled appropriately, for him to be like, we passed sweeping criminal justice, or I don't actually know if he said sweeping, that's just in my head, but for him to say that we passed criminal justice reform that affects 9% of our prisoners in the country, and this gold piece here, that includes ICE detentions, it includes a lot. I think it includes military as well. It might, or that might be in the other category. But yeah, it affects a very small portion of all of the prisoners. And it's a good first step, but it needs to be enacted on state levels before it actually makes any real changes or reforms.
Last year, I heard through friends the story of Alice Johnson. I was deeply moved. In 1997, Alice was sentenced to life in prison as a first-time nonviolent drug offender. Over the next 22 years, she became a prison minister, inspiring others to choose a better path. She had a big impact on that prison population and far beyond. Alice's story underscores the disparities and unfairness that can exist in criminal sentencing and the need to remedy this total injustice. She served almost that 22 years and had expected to be in prison for the remainder of her life. In June, I commuted Alice's sentence. When I saw Alice's beautiful family greet her at the prison gates, hugging and kissing and crying and laughing, I knew I did something right. Alice is with us tonight, and she is a terrific woman. Terrific. Alice, please.
There's the first person on the guest list. It kind of sounds like the cameraman is clapping. Well, that might be Trump. Might be Trump clapping. No, it's not. Okay.
Alice, thank you for reminding us that we always have the power to shape our own destiny. Thank you very much, Alice. Thank you very much. Inspired by stories like Alice's, my administration worked closely with members of both parties to sign the First Step Act into law. Big deal. It's a big deal. This legislation reformed sentencing laws that have wrongly and disproportionately harmed the African American community. The First Step Act gives nonviolent offenders the chance to re-enter society as productive, law-abiding citizens. Now, states across the country are following our lead. America is a nation that believes in redemption. We are also joined tonight by Matthew Charles from Tennessee. In 1996, at the age of 30, Matthew was sentenced to 35 years for selling drugs and related offenses. Over the next 2 decades, he completed more than 30 Bible studies, became a law clerk, and mentored many of his fellow inmates. Now Matthew is the very first person to be released from prison under the First Step Act. Matthew, please.
So I would refute a claim he made that America believes in, I can't remember the exact word he said, but in essence, second chances and, dang, it started with an R. Anyway, I would refute that. You probably noticed I made a face when he said that because we're in the United States, we punish criminals much longer than just their sentence. It's harder for them to get a job for basically forever afterwards because they have to check the box on employment applications. It's more difficult for them to get into college because likewise, they have to check the box. We're very punitive here in America when it comes to criminals, even after their sentence is over. Yeah, I have a tough time with that. Likewise, as I said before, this only affects 9% of all incarcerated people, and not all of those 9% are nonviolent drug offenders. So it's even less than that. It's probably like 5 or 6% maybe. So it's gonna hopefully states follow, but we're gonna need a lot more, and even to change the way we think about criminals. Even me saying, just calling them criminal, defines them by that crime rather than whoever they are who happened to make a mistake or do something illegal back in the day. And so it's gonna take a lot more redemption. Thank you. It's gonna take a lot more than just they get out of prison after 22 years. Good luck,
Thank you, Matthew. Welcome home. Now, Republicans and Democrats must join forces again to confront an urgent national crisis.
Here we go.
Congress has 10 days left to pass a bill that will fund our government, protect our homeland, and secure our very dangerous southern border. Now is the time for Congress to show the world that America is committed to ending illegal immigration and putting the ruthless coyotes, cartels, drug dealers, and human traffickers out of business.
For those of you who didn't watch my immigration video, it's like 2/3. I'd have to look up the numbers again, but 2/3 or 60% of all illegal immigration occurs from visa overstays, like that rapper who was just arrested the other day, actually, who's from the UK. Um, but yeah, they fly in, they overstay their visas, most of them. Most of them don't come over the southern border. But that's all he's focusing on right here, and I'm sure we'll get into it a bit more.
As we speak, large, organized caravans are on the march to the United States. We have just heard that Mexican cities, in order to remove...
Sorry, did you see that move by Nancy to like calm down people in the back? Um, the last caravan that was coming our way um, around the election never made it because they came up through Mexico and dispersed into Mexico. I'm sure, okay, I shouldn't say that none of them made it, but very few of them made it. And they're claiming asylum, which is a legal process. They're not coming to invade or illegally immigrate or anything. They're coming for asylum, which is totally legal under all laws that the United States has agreed to and has. So the reason they travel in caravans, by the way, is that it's a safety and numbers issue. Rather than coming up in ones and twos and using coyotes, as he brought up, they just come in a big caravan where they all support each other and are safe together, and they don't have to hire someone to smuggle because they're not trying to come across
The illegal immigrants from their communities are getting trucks and buses to bring them up to our country in areas where there is little border protection. I have ordered another 3,750 troops to our southern border to prepare for this tremendous onslaught. This is a moral issue. The lawless state of our southern border is a threat to the safety, security, and financial well-being of all America. We have a moral duty to create an immigration system that protects the lives and jobs of our citizens. This includes our obligation to the millions of immigrants living here today who followed the rules and respected our laws. Legal immigrants enrich our nation and strengthen our society in countless ways.
People are asking how much is it going to cost to put troops on the border. They're not allowed to use the military for policing purposes. That's a vestige from the Reconstruction era days. So we can't, except for, during martial law, but this isn't that situation. So putting troops on the border, all they would be able to do is assist Border Patrol in their job. So patrolling and stuff, they're not allowed to arrest anyone. How much would it cost? It would cost to transport them to the border, but since they're not actually deploying overseas or anything, they don't get paid any more than they would if they were just at Fort Hood, Texas, or wherever. Fort Hood, Texas is probably one of the biggest bases around the border region, but they aren't going to get paid anymore. All it's going to do is interrupt military members' lives in order to watch the desert for no reason, because these caravans go to the people who are coming for asylum, go to a port of entry and apply for asylum. They're not sneaking through the desert on camels or anything.
I want people to come into our country in the largest numbers ever, but they have to come in legally.
I mean, just for the record, I agree that they should come legally, but asylum is legal.
Tonight, I am asking you to defend our very dangerous southern border out of love and devotion to our fellow citizens and to our country. No issue better illustrates the divide between America's working class and America's political class than illegal immigration. Wealthy politicians and donors push for open borders while living their lives behind walls and gates and guards.
Really? That's such a child's argument for a wall and guards. Like, me in my 2-bedroom apartment, I have walls because I can see most of my apartment. This is, on the inside is my stuff. You know, it's not a 2,000-mile long wall through nowhere that no one's gonna go, and at best it'll slow them down by 5 minutes. If you didn't watch the beginning, before the State of the Union started, I showed where Department of Homeland Security cut through the steel slat fence that he was trying to build in less than 5 minutes. So at best, it's going to slow someone down by 5 minutes, and they can just get through. So it's like, what's the point of building it? It's not even a deterrent. Okay.
Meanwhile, working-class Americans are left to pay the price for mass illegal immigration. Reduced jobs, lower wages, overburdened schools.
Okay, note that he just said illegal immigration lowers wages. However, 10 minutes ago, he said wages have been increasing faster than they ever have.
Hospitals that are so crowded you can't get in, increased crime, and a depleted social.
Okay, I'm sorry again. That is a good face. Increased crime, he said. Illegal immigrants cause less crime than citizens do. This is a verifiable fact. Aside from the illegal entry into the United States, which is a crime, I agree, but they don't cause other crime, because if they get caught, they get deported. So they tend to not cause trouble. And that's verifiable. And I mean, I could watch my immigration video. All the sources for that are in there.
Safety net. Tolerance for illegal immigration is not compassionate. It is actually very cruel. One in 3 women is sexually assaulted on the long journey north.
Okay, yes.
Smugglers use migrant children as human pawns to exploit our laws and gain access to our country. Human traffickers and sex traffickers take advantage of the wide open areas between our ports of entry to smuggle thousands of young girls and women into the United States and to sell them into prostitution and modern-day slavery. Tens of thousands of innocent Americans are killed by lethal drugs that cross our border and flood into our cities, including meth,
Fentanyl,
heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl. The savage gang, MS-13, now operates in at least 20 different American states, and they almost all come through our southern border.
Okay, no. MS-13 is from the United States. It was created here in the United States. It has spread south into the other countries, Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, but it started here, so acting like it came here is incorrect. Also, a point on his heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl, which he always mispronounces. It's fentanyl. It's YL. Not that anyway. Those either come through ports of entry or here. You know, most opioid deaths, overdoses, are from prescription drugs and not really so much with the heroin. I think the last number I saw was 70 to 100,000 people a year die from opioid overdoses, which, I mean, it's a lot, but it's, I don't know, he shouldn't be blaming it on Mexico and the southern border. He's trying to link these problems when they're very distantly linked.
Just yesterday, an MS-13 gang member was taken into custody for a fatal shooting on a subway platform in New York City. We are removing these gang members by the thousands, but until we secure our border, they're going to keep streaming right back in. Year after year, countless Americans are murdered by criminal, illegal aliens. I've gotten to know many wonderful angel moms and dads and families. No one should ever have to suffer the horrible heartache that they have had to endure. Here tonight is Deborah Bissell. Just 3 weeks ago, Deborah's parents, Gerald and Sharon, were burglarized and shot to death in their Reno, Nevada home by an illegal alien. They were in their 80s and are survived by 4 children, 11 grandchildren, and 20 great-grandchildren. Also here tonight are Gerald and Sharon's granddaughter, Heather, and great-granddaughter, Madison. To Deborah, Heather, Madison, please stand. Few can understand your pain. Thank you, and thank you for being here. Thank you very much.
So I'm obviously against murder and illegal immigration. I prefer that you come legally, but this is one of the token people that I was expecting, where he picks someone out who has very extreme circumstances to talk about, and it's sad for that family, of course, but it's not like, yeah.
I will never forget, and I will fight for the memory of Gerald and Sharon, that it should never happen again. Not one more American life should be lost because our nation failed to control its very dangerous border. In the last 2 years, our brave ICE officers made 266,000 arrests of criminal aliens, including those charged or convicted of nearly 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 killings or murders. We are joined tonight by one of those law enforcement heroes, ICE Special Agent Elvin Hernandez. When Elvin
Just to point out, he said, look at that kid. Yeah, you can see him. I get some weird pauses. That's funny. He spouted some numbers there, 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes and such, which, again, those are bad. But we're in a country of 327 million people. So law of, large numbers, those crimes are also going to increase in number as well. So while that sounds like an enormous number, when you look at it across 325, okay, I'm obviously against all of these crimes, but he's using these exceptionally large numbers to make it seem like it's more of a problem. And I'm sure if I was a victim of any of those things or knew someone who was a victim, I'd feel differently. But as the casual American citizen who has not been affected by these things, it sounds like a lot, but across a huge country the size of Europe, it's not as bad as he's making it sound, I guess, which sounds terrible. Obviously, please don't commit sex crimes and assaults and murders.
Thank you.
There, okay, someone in the chat just pointed out. Yeah, he's using the absolute numbers rather than per capita, which is what he should be using because it would sound more realistic if he were to do that.
When Elvin was a boy, he and his family legally immigrated to the United States from the Dominican Republic. At the age of 8, Elvin told his dad he wanted to become a special agent. Today, he leads investigations into the scourge of international sex trafficking. Elvin says that if I can make sure these young girls get their justice, I've really done my job. Thanks to his work and that of his incredible colleagues, more than 300 women and girls have been rescued from the horror of this terrible situation. And more than 1,500 sadistic traffickers have been put behind bars.
The cameraman clapping is really distracting. And man, that kid couldn't be less interested.
Thank you, Alvin. We will always support the brave men and women of law enforcement. And I pledge to you tonight that I will never abolish our heroes from ICE. Thank you. My administration has sent to Congress a common-sense proposal to end the crisis on the southern border. It includes
What crisis?
humanitarian assistance, more law enforcement, drug detection at our ports, closing loopholes that enable child smuggling, and plans for a new physical barrier or wall to secure the vast areas between our ports of entry. In the past, most of the people in this room voted for a wall, but the proper wall never got built. I will get it built. This is a smart, strategic, see-through steel barrier, not just a
see-through steel barrier. Wow. I mean, and that's the thing that I showed a little bit earlier, that Department of Homeland Security was able to cut through in less than 5 minutes. I keep bringing that up because it's important. Because what's the point of spending billions of dollars on something it's basically a speed bump. So he keeps talking about this being a crisis. Oh, of course you can't see it. How can I do that without showing you everything? There. Okay. So he keeps talking about this being a crisis, yet border crossings are, I mean, they're up this year, but it's at such a minuscule level. And if I had, in my immigration video, I show the graph that goes all the way back to like the 70s, and it's so down that this is apprehensions. This chart is of Border Patrol apprehensions of people crossing the southern border. We have like quadrupled the size of our Border Patrol, and they're catching fewer people. This isn't like, oh, it's just more of them are getting through. If that's the case, then Border Patrol is really bad at their job because they're just, no. People are not crossing the southern border in the numbers that would make it a crisis. You know, if this was the year 2000, which is actually when people like Pelosi and even Obama sometime during this time voted for a wall because, yeah, these are hundreds of thousands. Now we're down to yeah. Now we're down to almost nothing. And yes, this does show just March, but I'm showing you everything. But you can see tons of charts that show the exact same thing for by year all the way back to, oh, is this one? Yeah, that one's good. So this might just be like review for a lot of people who have seen, of course I did it again, who saw my immigration video or even the border wall address live stream that I did. But here's by year all the way back to the 70s. You know, if you wanted to call this a crisis, then fine. I you know, even I'd be like, okay, this upward trend is a bad thing. We should probably do something about it. This orange line here is the size of the Border Patrol. So we increased the size of the Border Patrol, and they're catching fewer people, way fewer people. So this isn't a crisis. This is a manufactured crisis by Trump in order to get people scared that, you know, they're gonna be invaded by people seeking asylum. Are some of them drug smugglers? You know, not in the people doing asylum, but do people cross the border smuggling drugs and human trafficking? Yes, and that should be stopped, which is why we have 17,000 border agents instead of like what we used to have 20 years ago, just 5,000. So we've tripled the size of our Border Patrol. The number of people coming across is smaller unless you believe in some weird conspiracy like on America Working, which are the videos I cited in the immigration video. I've actually had quite a few requests of people. Maybe I'll do a secret live stream at some point where I watch those and we can kind of laugh together. But they believe that this is all a conspiracy and that every president since Reagan has been in on it. But anyway, I'm getting off track. These are the real numbers put out by Border Patrol, and it's not a crisis. If this is it's not. It's a crisis that's going away on its own. I mean, maybe it'll level off here, but this is not a crisis. It just isn't.
A simple concrete wall. It will be deployed in the areas identified by the border agents as having the greatest need. And these agents will tell you where walls go up, illegal crossings go way, way down.
Except for all the tunnels that go under where walls currently are.
San Diego used to have the most illegal border crossings in our country. In response, a strong security wall was put in place. This powerful barrier almost completely ended illegal crossings. The border city of El Paso, Texas, used to have extremely high rates of violent crime, one of the highest in the entire country, and considered one of our nation's most dangerous cities. Now, immediately upon its building, with a powerful barrier in place, El Paso is one of the safest cities in our country. Simply put, walls work and walls save lives. So let's work together, compromise.
Okay, so walls, like in San Diego, and even several miles out from San Diego or in El Paso on a border town, walls work where it's like this side is America, that side is Mexico. We do our business, and there's a wall. That makes sense. But a wall, first of all, he said it himself. He wants to put it up in strategic locations, so he doesn't even want the 2,000-mile, at least what he's saying right now. He did want the sea to shining sea wall before, but anyway. Putting it in strategic locations, people just go around it, and I'm tired of talking about the border wall because it's a dumb idea. 70% of Americans are already against it.
And reach a deal that will truly make America safe. As we work to defend our people's safety, we must also ensure our economic resurgence continues at a rapid pace. No one has benefited more from our thriving economy than women, who have filled 58% of the newly created jobs last year.
Part-time jobs. Really? Okay, that's weird. Is she raising the... Oh. Wow.
You weren't supposed to do that.
Oh my...
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Stay on script.
All Americans can be proud that we have more women in the workforce than ever before.
Are there any Republican women in there, or is that all Democrat? I don't see any Republicans that I recognize.
Don't sit yet. You're going to like this.
Oh.
And exactly 1 century after Congress passed the constitutional amendment giving women the right to vote, we also have more women serving in Congress than at any time before.
Okay, so the Republican women are off to the side there. Okay. It's nice to know they're wearing white as well. Solidarity. I couldn't hear what they're chanting. Oh, USA. This is so weird. This is so strange. This has never happened. Ugh.
That's great. Really great. And congratulations. That's great. As
Congrat.
part of our commitment to improving opportunity for women everywhere, this Thursday, we are launching the first ever government-wide initiative focused on economic empowerment for women in developing countries. To build on, thank you. To build on our incredible economic success, one priority is paramount: reversing decades of calamitous trade policies. So bad. We are now making it clear to China that after years of targeting our industries and stealing our intellectual property, the theft of American jobs and wealth has come to an end. Therefore, we recently imposed tariffs on $250 billion of Chinese goods, and now our Treasury is receiving billions and billions of dollars. But I don't blame China for taking
I don't think that's
advantage
true.
of us. I blame our leaders and representatives for allowing this travesty to happen. I have great respect for President Xi, and we are now working on a new trade deal with China. But it must include real structural change to end unfair trade practices, reduce our chronic trade deficit, and protect American jobs.
For those of you who think, okay, so he brought up tariffs, so I'll very quickly address that. A tariff is a tax on an import. So if China or whoever sends us a bunch of aluminum, it gets taxed. China doesn't pay that tax. Whoever bought it here in America pays that tax. That it's an import tax, but it's a tariff. That's what he call. That's yeah. So something comes in, something required to make cars, for example. The car manufacturer pays the tariff. It's not China or the Chinese. It's certainly not the Chinese government. It's whoever imported the thing. Tariffs hurt the local economy.
Another historic trade blunder was the
Nafta.
catastrophe known as Nafta. I have met the men and women of Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, New Hampshire, and many other states whose dreams were shattered by the signing of Nafta.
Please.
For years, politicians promised them they would renegotiate for a better deal, but no one ever tried until now. Our new U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, the USMCA, will replace Nafta and deliver for American workers like they haven't had delivered to for a long time. I hope you can pass the USMCA into law so that we can bring back our manufacturing jobs in even greater numbers, expand American agriculture, protect intellectual property, and ensure that more cars are proudly stamped with our 4 beautiful words: Made in the USA.
So he's previously claimed that Mexico is now paying for the wall indirectly through the USMCA. Here, he did say that it has not been passed, so obviously no. And from what I understand, it's mostly just a renamed NAFTA. But when it comes to stamping things with Made in the USA, especially when it comes to cars, something like only 40% of the car needs to actually be made in the United States for that to be the case, for it to be stamped that way. And a lot of domestic car brands that you think are made in America are not. And a lot of foreign car brands are, like Volkswagen. They make those here. Jeeps, they make in Mexico. So it's that whole like foreign and domestic cars and made in the USA stuff, that it's almost like labeling something organic. It really doesn't mean much anymore.
Tonight, I am also asking you to pass the United States Reciprocal Trade Act, so that if another country places an unfair tariff on an American product,
We automatically start a trade
we can
war.
charge them the exact same tariff on the exact same product that they sell to us.
That would be a terrible idea. That's so we automatically start trade wars whenever there's a tariff, is what he just said.
Both parties should be able to unite for a great rebuilding of America's crumbling infrastructure.
That's infrastructure is a big one. Most of the highways and bridges and stuff were made in the 50s and 60s, and they're going to start crumbling.
I know that Congress is eager to pass an infrastructure bill, and I am eager to work with you on legislation to deliver new and important infrastructure investment, including investments in the cutting-edge industries of the future. This is not an option. This is a necessity. The next major priority for me and for all of us should be to lower the cost of health care and prescription drugs and to protect patients with pre-existing conditions.
So why did you gut Obamacare then? Let's not get into the healthcare debate right now.
Already as a result of my administration's efforts in 2018, drug prices experienced their single largest decline in 46 years. But we must do more. It's unacceptable that Americans pay vastly more than people in other countries for the exact same drugs, often made in the exact same place. This is wrong. This is unfair. And together, we will stop it. And we'll stop it fast. I am asking Congress to pass legislation that finally takes on the problem of global freeloading and delivers fairness and price transparency for American patients, finally.
If he were to be saying these things about any other industry, people would be freaking out. I like what he's saying so far. Obviously, lower prescription drug costs, more price transparency, stuff like that. But if he was saying that about, I don't know, what's another industry? I mean, right now I think cable TV or something, but that doesn't. Anyway, if he were to say that about any other industry, we're going to federally mandate that cable is only $40 a month. There'd be a libertarian freak out. But hey, I'm people are asking, I guess you didn't hear me a long time ago when I said there is a moderate's guide to healthcare in the works.
We should also require drug companies, insurance companies, and hospitals to disclose real prices to foster competition. And
there's no such thing as competition when it comes to healthcare. You know, you don't shop around Wow, okay. You don't shop around. Like if you're in a car accident, you're not like, "Oh, wait, can you take me to that hospital because it's $200 cheaper? I know it's further away, but can you do that?" Like nobody shops around for that sort of thing. Maybe, well, okay, very obviously for elective and cosmetic stuff, but when you're in a situation where you don't get to shop around, even if prices were available. It's just not what people do. You go to your nearest hospital in emergencies, but even then, if it's say a non-emergency, like if I this is dental, but it's an apt comparison. Uh, if I have a cavity and I need to get it filled, I'm just gonna call a dentist and get it done. I'm not gonna call five and check prices and people don't do that when it comes to healthcare.
And bring costs way down. No force in history has done more to advance the human condition than American freedom. In recent years, we have made remarkable progress in the fight against HIV and AIDS. Scientific breakthroughs have brought a once distant dream within reach. My budget will ask Democrats and Republicans to make the needed commitment to eliminate the HIV epidemic in the United States within 10 years. We have made incredible strides, incredible.
AIDS is so retro. That's a South Park joke. Many of you know I like South Park.
Together we will defeat AIDS in America and beyond.
This is such a weird thing to pick on.
Tonight I am also asking you to join me in another fight that all Americans can get behind, the fight against childhood cancer.
I mean, is anybody going to be against the fight against childhood cancer? I mean, come on.
Joining Melania in the gallery this evening is a very brave 10-year-old girl, Grace Eline. Every birthday.
Okay, that's... For those of you who remember watching, for those of you who watched before this started, I specifically looked at the list and saw her and was like, why is she? That's weird. It makes sense now.
Hi, Grace.
Yeah. God.
Every birthday since she was 4, Grace asked her friends to donate to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. She did not know that one day she might be a patient herself. That's what happened. Last year, Grace was diagnosed with brain cancer. Immediately, she began radiation treatment. At the same time, she rallied her community and raised more than $40,000 for the fight against cancer.
What is up with that little boy who just sits there?
When Grace completed treatment last fall, her doctors and nurses cheered. They loved her. They still love her. God. With tears in their eyes as she hung up a poster that read, last day of chemo.
Okay, I'm glad others of you are like, this is weird, right? Is he proposing a policy to like war on cancer?
Thank you very much, Grace. You are a great inspiration to everyone in this room. Thank you very much.
And he's creepy. Oh.
Many childhood cancers have not seen new therapies in decades. My budget will ask Congress for $500 million over the next 10 years to fund this critical life-saving research. To help support working parents, the time has come to pass school choice for Americans' children.
There's also going to be, there is a video on charter schools in the works. School choice is the latest euphemism for charter schools.
I am also proud to be the first president to include in my budget a plan for nationwide paid family leave so that every new parent has the chance to bond with their newborn child.
And for that, that's a good idea.
There could be no greater contrast to the beautiful image of a mother holding her infant child than the chilling displays our nation saw in recent days. Lawmakers in New York cheered with delight upon the passage of legislation that would allow a baby to be ripped from the mother's womb moments from birth. These are living, feeling, beautiful babies who will never get the chance to share their love and their dreams with the world. And then we had the case of the governor of Virginia, where he stated he would execute a baby after birth. To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children who can feel pain in the mother's womb. Let us work together to build a culture that cherishes innocent life. And let us reaffirm a fundamental truth. All children born...
Yeah, okay, so I just looked it up because I was like, I haven't looked into the New York law as much as I would have liked before this. But of course, after a baby is born, you cannot abort it. That's just straight up homicide. And the law does not allow that. Yeah, it removes abort. Okay, so the law that was passed, removes abortion from the state's penal code. There's still a time limit on it. After 24 weeks, you can't, unless certain things, life of the mother, absence of viability, such like that. So once a human being was born is alive, and killing a baby that is born is homicide. You can't, I think he's really stretching definitions here in order to make a point, which is not beyond what Trump normally does.
born and unborn, are made in the holy image of God. The final part of my agenda is to protect American security. Over the last 2 years, we have begun to fully rebuild the United States military with $700 billion last year and $716 billion this year. We are also getting other nations to pay their fair share. Finally,
The military doesn't need to be rebuilt. We spend more in the military than almost anything else. It doesn't need to be rebuilt. It's doing fine.
for years, the United States was being treated very unfairly by friends of ours, members of NATO. But now we have secured, over the last couple of years, more than $100 billion of increase in defense spending from our NATO allies. They said it couldn't be done. As part of our military buildup, the United States is developing a state-of-the-art missile defense system. Under my administration, we will never apologize for advancing America's interests. For example, decades ago, the United States entered into a treaty with Russia in which we agreed to limit and reduce our missile capability. While we followed the agreement and the rules to the letter, Russia repeatedly violated its terms. It's been going on for many years. That is why I announced that the United States
Is that the Windows startup
is officially withdrawing from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, or INF Treaty. Perhaps
That was a terrible decision on his part, and it was totally in Putin's favor. Because Russia wasn't really violating the treaty, but now that we've pulled out of it, they can do whatever they want. Dumb. Also, yes, the missile defense system, Reagan talked about that and called it Star Wars, and it never happened. And it was supposed to be like with lasers that stop ICBMs and stuff. Yeah.
we really have no choice. Perhaps we can negotiate a different agreement, adding China and others. Or perhaps we can't, in which case we will outspend and out-innovate all others by far. As part of a bold new diplomacy, we continue our historic push for peace on the Korean Peninsula. Our hostages have come home. Nuclear testing has stopped, and there has not been a missile launch in more than 15 months. If I had not been elected President of the United States, we would right now, in my opinion, be in a major war with North Korea.
That is so not even close to true.
Much work remains to be done, but my relationship with Kim Jong-un is a good one. Chairman Kim and I will meet again on February 27th and 28th in Vietnam. Two weeks ago, the United States officially recognized the legitimate government of Venezuela and its new president.
There we go. Someone asked when he's going to
Juan
mention Venezuela.
Guaido. We stand with the Venezuelan people in their noble quest for freedom, and we condemn the brutality of the Maduro regime, whose socialist policies have turned that nation from being the wealthiest in South America into a state of abject poverty and despair. Here in the United States, we are alarmed by the new calls to adopt socialism in our country.
The new calls. People haven't been calling for that since the 30s.
America was founded on liberty and independence, and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free, and we will stay free.
Dumb. Oh, that's so embarrassing.
Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
Crying out loud. Bernie. God, these USA chants are so childish.
One of the most complex set of challenges we face, and have for many years, is in the Middle East. Our approach is based on principled realism, not discredited theories that have failed for decades to yield progress. For this reason, my administration recognized the true capital of Israel and proudly opened the American embassy in Jerusalem. Our brave troops have now been fighting in the Middle East for almost 19 years. In Afghanistan and Iraq, nearly 7,000 American heroes have given their lives. More than 52,000 Americans have been badly wounded. We have spent more than $7 trillion in fighting wars in the Middle East. As a candidate for president, I loudly pledged a new approach. Great nations do not fight endless wars.
I agree. Time to, yeah. Long overstayed our welcome there.
ISIS controlled more than 20,000 square miles in Iraq and Syria just 2 years ago. Today, we have liberated virtually all of the territory from the grip of these bloodthirsty monsters. Now, as we work with our allies to destroy the remnants of ISIS, it is time to give our brave warriors in Syria a warm welcome home. I have also accelerated our negotiations to reach, if possible, a political settlement in Afghanistan.
He's negotiating with the Taliban.
The opposing side.
The opposing side.
Is also very happy to be negotiating.
The Taliban.
Our troops have fought with unmatched valor, and thanks to their bravery, we are now able to pursue a possible political solution. to this long and bloody conflict. In Afghanistan, my administration is holding constructive talks with a number of Afghan groups, including the Taliban. As we make progress in these negotiations, we will be able to reduce our troops' presence and focus on counterterrorism, and we will indeed focus on counterterrorism. We do not know whether we'll achieve an agreement, but we do know that after 2 decades of war, the hour has come to at least try for peace, and the other side would like to do the same thing. It's time.
This is a lot like the withdrawal from Vietnam, except, I mean, that one wasn't negotiated, but that's what this feels like. We're negotiating with the Taliban to get out of Afghanistan. What's going to happen as soon as we leave? I think we all know the answer to that, sort of, so.
Above all, friend and foe alike must never doubt this nation's power and will to defend our people. 18 years ago, violent terrorists attacked the USS Cole, and last month, American forces killed one of the leaders of that attack. We are honored to be joined tonight by Tom Wibberley, whose son, Navy seaman Craig Wibberley, was one of the 17 sailors we tragically lost. Tom, we vow to always remember the heroes of the USS Cole. Thank you, Tom. My administration has acted decisively to confront the world's leading state sponsor of terror, the radical regime in Iran. It is a radical regime.
Really.
They do bad, bad things. To ensure this corrupt
Saudi Arabia is way worse than Iran.
Dictatorship never acquires nuclear weapons, I withdrew the United States from the disastrous Iran nuclear deal.
Also a terrible decision. That was a pretty decent deal, and now they're allowed to do whatever they want.
And last fall, we put in place the toughest sanctions.
Just for those of you who aren't aware, and it's a complicated situation that I'm going to sum up here in just a few sentences, but the Islamic world is divided in half with Sunni and Shia. The United States tends to side with the Sunnis, and the leading country for that is Saudi Arabia. Russia tends to side with the Shia, and Iran is the main one. So it's US-backed Saudi Arabia, Russian-backed Iran.
Ever imposed by us on a country. We will not avert our eyes from a regime that chants death to America and threatens genocide against the Jewish people. We must never ignore the vile poison of anti-Semitism or those who spread its venomous creed. With one voice, we must confront this hatred anywhere and everywhere it occurs. Just months ago, 11 Jewish Americans were viciously murdered in an anti-Semitic attack on the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. SWAT officer Timothy Matson raced into the gunfire and was shot 7 times chasing down the killer, and he was very successful. Timothy has just had his 12th surgery, and he's going in for many more. But he made the trip to be here with us tonight. Officer Matson, please.
What is going on? Why is this one dragging on?
Thank you. We are forever grateful. Thank you very much. Tonight, we are also joined by Pittsburgh survivor, Judah Samet. He arrived at the synagogue as the massacre began. But not only did Judah narrowly escape death last fall, more than 7 decades ago, he narrowly survived the Nazi concentration camps. Today is Judah's 81st birthday.
As someone pointed out, this was something done by a city cop, which, hero, and good on him for doing what he did, but it's not like Trump stopped this terrorist act before it happened or anything. Oh, no. No. Stop.
Right. They wouldn't do that for me, Judah.
For crying out loud.
Judah says he can still remember the exact moment nearly 75 years ago, after 10 months in a concentration camp, when he and his family were put on a train and told they were going to another camp. Suddenly, the train screeched to a very strong halt. A soldier appeared. Judah's family braced for the absolute worst. Then his father cried out with joy, "It's the Americans! It's the Americans!"
All right, this is bordering on creepy as well. Like, stop.
A second Holocaust survivor who was here tonight, Joshua Kaufman, was a prisoner at Dachau. He remembers watching through a hole in the wall of a cattle car as American soldiers rolled in with tanks. To me, Joshua recalls, the American soldiers were proof that God exists, and they came down from the sky. They came down from heaven. I began this evening by honoring 3 soldiers who fought on D-Day in the Second World War. One of them was Herman Zaitchik. But there is more to Herman's story. A year after he stormed the beaches of Normandy, Herman was one of the American soldiers who helped liberate Dachau. He was one of the Americans who helped rescue Joshua from that hell on earth. Almost 75 years later, Herman and Joshua are both together in the gallery tonight, seated side by side, here in the home of American freedom. Herman and Joshua, your presence this evening is very much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Wow, he is tall. Again, he's going back to World War II and the Holocaust, which is like, this speech is dragging on. Like, it has gone on. Oh, man. It's been like an hour and 40 minutes of him talking. And he's bringing up this old. I mean, yeah, America accomplished some great things in the past. It'd be nice if we could do some of those now.
Thank you. When American soldiers set out beneath the dark skies over the English Channel in the early hours of D-Day, 1944, they were just young men of 18 and 19, hurtling on fragile landing craft toward the most momentous battle in the history of war. They did not know if they would survive the hour. They did not know if they would grow old. But they knew that America had to prevail. Their cause was this nation and generations yet unborn. Why did they do it? They did it for America. They did it for us. Everything that has come since our triumph over communism, our giant leaps of science and discovery, our unrivaled progress towards equality and justice, all of it is possible thanks to the blood and tears and courage and vision of the Americans who came before. Think of this Capitol. Think of this very chamber where lawmakers before you voted to end slavery, to build the railroads and the highways and defeat fascism, to secure civil rights, and to face down evil empires. Here tonight, we have legislators from across this magnificent republic. You have come from the rocky shores of Maine and the volcanic peaks of Hawaii, from the snowy woods of Wisconsin and the red deserts of Arizona, from the green farms of Kentucky and the golden beaches of California.
Engage patriotism.
Together we represent the most extraordinary nation in all of history. What will we do with this moment? How will we be remembered? I ask the men and women of this Congress, look at the opportunities before us. Our most thrilling achievements are still ahead. Our most exciting journeys still await. Our biggest victories are still to come. We have not yet begun to dream. We must choose whether we are defined by our differences or whether we dare to transcend them. We must choose whether we squander our great inheritance or whether we proudly declare that we are Americans. We do the incredible. We defy the impossible. We conquer the unknown. This is the time to reignite the American imagination. This is the time to search for the tallest summit and set our sights on the brightest star. This is the time to rekindle the bonds of love and loyalty and memory that link us together as citizens, as neighbors, as patriots. This is our future, our fate, and our choice to make. I am asking you to choose greatness. No matter the trials we face, no matter the challenges to come, we must go forward together. We must keep America first in our hearts. We must keep freedom alive in our souls. And we must always keep faith in America's destiny. That one nation, under God, must be the hope and the promise and the light and the glory among all the nations of the world. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Man, that ending, I'm sure plenty of people are going to say, like, that was real presidential of him and such, but man, that was a lot of just, like, self-flagellating, freedom engaging, like, there was no real substance in the ending there. It was just, America is awesome. Don't you all agree? We should continue to be awesome. Which, yeah, but that's very strange. Looks like, yeah, so it is officially over. Yay. We made it, everyone. It took 2.5 hours, but 1 hour and 45 minutes of that was Trump. So, don't blame me. I had quite a few requests to do the response. I suppose if I see enough in the chat, if you guys really want me to, I can do that. But a few points I wanted to make about the speech in general. He did a lot of weird historical, like 75 years ago this happened, 60 years ago this happened, and not a lot of here's what we're doing right now. That's usually what presidents do. Job numbers are up. We've opened such and such factory. Here's a person who got a job specifically because of my policy, stuff like that. But he did a lot of D-Day remembering, which is weird. He did a lot of jokes and breaks that are very strange for the State of the Union. Usually the State of the Union is the president stands there and gives a speech. It's not open mic comedy hour or whatever. And there were quite a few unpresidential breaks. Even, I mean, uh, unpresidential is the word for the president, but uncongressional doesn't sound right. But unprofessional anyway. It seemed unprofessional. The USA chants, like that's what you do in high school. Um, yeah, it was very strange, very unstatesmanlike. Um, so he didn't lie nearly as much as I was expecting. I suspect that's because he knew that this is going to be under the microscope and it's going to be picked apart and cherry picked and fact checked. I'm sure there's fact check articles already out there, and I'm sure I'll be tweeting a few of them out. There's usually some sort of Twitter video about he lied every 34 seconds or something like that. Um, so I'm sure we'll hear some of that. Hopefully, you got quite a bit of that with me tonight. And the chat blew up when I mentioned the response. So if someone in my Discord could get the link to the response, I will do the response. I won't. We're not going to talk about it for 2 hours or anything. Usually the response is short, but we'll give that a watch and see what they have to say also. But I am going to take a quick break here while I get that set up. So don't go anywhere if you want to watch the response. I appreciate all the super chats, and I will read them when I get a chance. So quick break, and we'll be back with the Democrat response. Okay, and we're back. Hopefully, none of you bailed out on me or anything. Well, okay, I'm willing to bet plenty of you bailed out, but that's fine. I have the response. I think yes. So I have the response, and we'll go through this. I can't imagine that I'll be pausing nearly as much as I did for Trump, and it's only 11 minutes. So yeah, okay. There's someone in the chat. Okay. Mary Cortez just mentioned that there was no mention of climate change during the State of the Union. I didn't even notice that it was missing. So, wow. I imagine she's going to bring it up, though, so we'll see.
Growing up, my family went back and forth between lower middle class and working class. Yet, even when they came home weary and bone-tired, my parents found a way to show us all who we could be. My librarian mother taught us to love learning. My father, a shipyard worker, put in overtime and extra shifts, and they made sure we volunteered to help others. Later, they both became United Methodist ministers, an expression of the faith that guides us. These were our family values: faith, service, education, and responsibility. Now, we only had one car, so sometimes my dad had to hitchhike and walk long stretches during the 30-mile trip home from the shipyards. One rainy night, my mom got worried. We piled in the car and went out looking for him. and we eventually found my dad making his way along the road, soaked and shivering in his shirt sleeves. When he got in the car, my mom asked if he'd left his coat at work.
The response, regardless of who it is, they always do this like family story. I remember, who was the guy from Louisiana who like weirdly stopped to drink water in the middle of it? It was a long time ago, during Obama. But he did the same. My dad was a hard worker, etc., etc. So we'll get through this together.
He explained that he'd given it to a homeless man he'd met on the highway. When we asked why he'd given away his only jacket, my dad turned to us and said, "I knew when I left that man he'd still be alone, but I could give him my coat because I knew you were coming for me." Our power and strength as Americans lives in our hard work and our belief in more. My family understood
Bobby
firsthand
Jindal.
that while success is not guaranteed, we live in a nation where opportunity is possible. But we do not succeed alone. In these United States, when times are tough, we can persevere because our friends and neighbors will come for us. Our first responders will come for us. It is this mantra, this uncommon grace of community, that has driven me to become an attorney, a small business.
And you guys are right. I'm conflating Rubio and Jindal, but I was specifically talking about Jindal. But yeah, Rubio was the water guy. I apologize.
Owner, a writer, and most recently, the Democratic nominee for governor of Georgia. My reason for running was simple. I love our country and its promise of opportunity for all. And I stand here tonight because I hold fast to my father's credo. Together, we are coming for America, for a better America. Just a few weeks ago, I joined volunteers to distribute meals to furloughed federal workers. They waited in line for a box of food and a sliver of hope since they hadn't received paychecks in weeks. Making livelihoods of our federal workers a pawn for political games is a disgrace. The shutdown was a stunt, engineered by the President of the United States, one that defied every tenet of fairness and abandoned not just our people, but our values. For 7 years, I led the Democratic Party in the Georgia House of Representatives. I didn't always agree with the Republican speaker or governor, but I understood that our constituents didn't care about our political parties, they cared about their lives. So when we had to negotiate criminal justice reform or transportation or foster care improvements, the leaders of our state didn't shut down. We came together and we kept our word. It should be no different in our nation's capital. We may come from different sides of the political aisle, but our joint commitment to the ideals of this nation cannot be negotiable. Our most urgent work is to realize Americans' dreams of today and tomorrow, to carve a path to independence and prosperity that can last a lifetime. Children deserve an excellent education from cradle to career. We owe them safe schools and the highest standards, regardless of zip code. Yet this White House responds timidly, while first graders practice active shooter drills, and the price of higher education grows ever steeper. From now on, our leaders must be willing to tackle gun safety measures and face the crippling effect of educational loans, to support educators and invest what is necessary to unleash the power of America's greatest minds. In Georgia and around the country, people are striving for a middle class where a salary truly equals economic security. But instead, families' hopes are being crushed by Republican leadership that ignores real life or just doesn't understand it. Under the current administration, far too many hard-working Americans are falling behind, living paycheck to paycheck, most without labor unions to protect them from even worse harm.
A lot of people are asking if she's in front of a green screen, and I thought that at first. Maybe it's just because it's scrunched down, but once they zoomed in on her, like, you can tell it's not a green screen by how her hair is in front of people and stuff. It does look a little strange, like having these people just standing in the background, but no, I don't think she's in front of a green screen.
The Republican tax bill rigged the system against working people. Rather than bringing back jobs, plants are closing, layoffs are looming, and wages struggle to keep pace with the actual cost of living. We owe more to the millions of
I agree with everything she just said. The tax cut that just, well, it went into effect for last year's taxes, so you'll see it if you are filing your taxes. I have a video on how that works, by the way. But that tax cut helped wealthy people way more than it helped anybody else. Like, yeah, if I was a rich person, I would be very happy about these tax cuts. But me, being me, I didn't see much difference personally. I don't have kids, so the child tax credit didn't help me any. Anyway, wages are stagnant. They have grown more recently than they have in the past, but still barely. And yeah, factories are closing all over the place. As I said in the very beginning, more coal plants have shut down under Trump in the first 2 years of Trump than all of Obama. So he's like the enemy of coal, of beautiful, clean coal.
Everyday folks who keep our economy running, like truck drivers forced to buy their own rigs, farmers caught in a trade war, small business owners in search of capital, and domestic workers serving without labor protections. Women and men who could thrive if only they had the support and freedom to do so. We know bipartisanship could craft a 21st century immigration plan, but this administration chooses to cage children and tear families apart. Compassionate treatment at the border is not the same as open borders. President Reagan understood this. President Obama understood this. Americans understand this. And Democrats stand ready to effectively secure our ports and borders. But we must all embrace that from agriculture to healthcare to entrepreneurship, America is made stronger by the presence of immigrants, not walls. And rather than suing to dismantle the Affordable Care Act, as Republican attorneys general have, our leaders must protect the progress we've made and commit to expanding health care and lowering costs for everyone. My father has battled prostate cancer for years. To help cover the cost, I found myself sinking deeper into debt, because while you can defer some payments, you can't defer cancer treatment. In this great nation, Americans are skipping blood pressure pills, forced to choose between buying medicine or paying rent. Maternal mortality rates show that mothers, especially Black mothers, risk death to give birth. And in 14 states, including my home state, where a majority want it, our leaders refuse to expand Medicaid, which could save rural hospitals, save economies, and save lives. We can do so much more. Take action on climate change. Defend individual liberties with fair-minded judges. But none of these ambitions are possible without the bedrock guarantee of our right to vote. Let's be clear. Voter suppression is real. From making it harder to register and stay on the rolls, to moving and closing polling places, to rejecting lawful ballots, we can no longer ignore these threats to democracy.
Okay, so she just kind of alluded to who she is. People in the chat were asking who this person is. She ran for governor in Georgia. And I actually mentioned that race specifically in my video, Suppressing the Vote, about disenfranchisement, voter ID laws, and all that. Her opponent, the Republican opponent, took people off of the voter rolls after registration had closed, so they couldn't fix it. And that's a huge part of why she lost, was because of voter suppression in that state. It was, I think she's still suing. I haven't kept up with that story, but there was a lawsuit regarding it because it was so clearly voter suppression
While I acknowledge the results of the 2018
Okay.
election here in Georgia, I did not, and we cannot, accept efforts to undermine our right to vote. That's why I started a nonpartisan organization called Fair Fight to advocate for voting rights. This is the next battle for our democracy, one where all eligible citizens can have their say about the vision we want for our country. We must reject the cynicism that says allowing every eligible vote to be cast and counted is a power grab. Americans understand that these are the values our brave men and women in uniform and our veterans risk their lives to defend. The foundation of our moral leadership around the globe is free and fair elections, where voters pick their leaders, not where politicians pick their voters. In this time of division and crisis, we must come together and stand for and with one another. America has stumbled time and again on its quest towards justice and equality. But with each generation, we have revisited our fundamental truths, and where we falter, we make amends. We fought Jim Crow with the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. Yet we continue to confront racism from our past and in our present, which is why we must hold everyone from the highest offices to our own families accountable for racist words and deeds, and call racism what it is: wrong.
She mentioned the Voting Rights Act and dismantling Jim Crow, and I know a whole bunch of people are going to freak out that, well, actually, the Republicans, blah, blah. I made a video specifically about that, called Political Ships of Theseus, about the party switch. Yes, Democrats were against that, but they had the majority in both houses, so Democrats were also the reason it passed. Northern Democrats.
America achieved a measure of reproductive justice in Roe v. Wade, but we must never forget it is immoral to allow politicians to harm women and families to advance a political agenda. We affirmed marriage equality, and yet the LGBTQ community remains under attack. So, even as I am very disappointed by the president's approach to our problems, I still don't want him to fail. But we need him to tell the truth, and to respect his duties, and respect the extraordinary diversity that defines America. Our progress has always been found in the refuge, in the basic instinct of the American experiment, to do right by our people. And with a renewed commitment to social and economic justice, we will create a stronger America together. Because America wins by fighting for our shared values against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That is who we are. And when we do so, never wavering, the state of our union will always be strong. Thank you, and may God bless the United States of America.
Apparently she walks away at the end here, so you can see it's not a green screen. I admit it did look weird. Oh, she didn't walk away. Someone showed me a picture of her walking away. Anyway, it wasn't a green screen. I know that. So, I find the chat funny when you're saying there wasn't enough D-Day. What did she think about D-Day? Yeah. That's another thing that was not mentioned during obviously D-Day, but there was no trans rights or any of that stuff from either side, which is interesting, I suppose. Shout out to H Bomber Guy for your awesome stream. If you happen to be watching this, I happen to be in and out watching that, and I just happened to catch AOC on there, and that was awesome. So I don't necessarily have any thoughts about the response. I never do. She said, at least she brought up climate change, and she did do, wage stagnation and stuff, but it wasn't necessarily a response to the State of the Union. It was just kind of, here is the State of the Union from the opposing party's view. So yeah, it wasn't like a fact check or anything, which is what hopefully I did for you guys. Um, so that said, I don't think I have anything else that I wanted to bring up. Hopefully you got everything from the stream that you were hoping for. I will be in London next week, so that'll be exciting. If any of you happen to, well, you're probably, anyone in London is probably asleep at this point, but if you're watching this later, I hope to see you there. For those of you in the US, I'll be at VidCon US over the summer as well. But we'll probably do a live stream well before that. So, yeah. I suppose that's it from me tonight, unless you guys have anything else to say. I will be reading through the super chats, so if you have any last minute super chats you want to get in, I appreciate those. If you happen to be one of those, I don't support Patreon anymore because of whatever reasons that I may or may not agree with. Super chat would be the way to do that if you want, because I don't have any other open donation streams. So unless you guys have any other questions, I suppose that's it for me tonight. And I'll be talking to you guys all later.